This Apex wheel weighs just 20 pounds. This Volk T37 replica weighs 38 pounds. And this bad boy, well, this weighs 52 pounds per wheel, not including the tires. They are, of course, all fitted with exactly the same excellent Bridgestone Potenza RE71RS, and we are going to deep dive into how wheel weight and rotational inertia really affects your vehicle's performance. Well, this test did not go as I thought it would. In fact, I did 3 tests, acceleration, braking and handling, with 2 different versions of this car and 2 different circuits, and none of it is what I imagined. Let's get into it. First, let me introduce you to my theory. I am obsessed with weight saving. The internet tells us all the time that weight is the worst thing for performance driving, which it is. Unsprung weight, which is weight not controlled by your damper, is even worse, as it's just out there doing whatever it wants to do. But the worst weight of all is rotational unsprung mass. This mass is not only unsprung, but your engine also has to rotate it, so it's heavier than it actually is. The correct multiplier for this weight is hotly debated, and how far out the weight is from the center of rotation has a huge effect on how much energy it takes to rotate it. But the quickest way to explain it right now is that 10 pounds of mass that you have to rotate is the equivalent of 15 to 20 pounds of static weight. So you can see it adds up quickly. As I hate extra weight and I love testing things, I thought this was going to be an easy project. In fact, I wanted it to be so impactful, I went to the effort of making my own custom wheels just to prove this point. Obviously, all 3 sets of wheels are exactly the same 19x10 ET25. And as I've already mentioned, they're all fitted with the excellent Bridgestone Potenza RE71RS, which is one of the best 200 treadwear track focused tires you can buy. I'm a really big fan. It is a great tire. Like, honestly, this with the tire is over 70 pounds and it is a mass to handle. Mounting this on this car has been my least favorite thing I've ever done probably in my career. It's just a lot to handle. So with such massive unrealistic differences in wheel weights between the light and the heavy wheels, this is going to be an easy test, right? It's going to show huge differences without me having to try. Did it? It did not. Buckle up, this is going to be a geeky one.
This is the new OBD11.3, which brings faster pairing and scanning, a new low power mode, a battery check tool, and even an awesome car buying assistant. But its main feature is dealer level programming. Here's what I've used it for on my M3. Acoustic seatbelt warning disable. Now I have a harness, it would bong at me. Now it doesn't. Stop start disable. It's a track car, I don't need that. TPMS disable. I don't want to deal with the TPMS sensors in my test wheels, so it's now disabled. Cruise control minimum speed. The speed limit in the paddock at the track is 15 miles an hour, which wasn't available before. Now it is. I service the car myself, so I use the all service reset, brake fluid service reset, brake pad reset all the time. I also used it to code my new battery. It can do so much more. It's officially licensed by BMW, VW, Toyota, Lexus and Ford. It can do over 1,000 things. Check out that website at obd11.com and you can get a huge 20% discount on your entire car by using the code TIRE.
The first test I performed was the obvious one, acceleration. My rule with testing is to always start the testing with no expectations. So I didn't do any of the maths or look at any data before running the test. I just assumed huge differences. On my way to the acceleration test, when driving there at road speeds, there were some subjective differences. Even at low speed, the comfort difference was noticeable, with the light wheels feeling like they skipped over the bumps and like happily bounced around, and the heavy wheels crashed through them. The torque needed to steer increased as the wheels got heavier too, which I feel like some people would think is sporty, but in reality it just dulled the feeling and add lots of extra shoulder and arm work. As for the test configuration, I did not start the acceleration at 0 miles an hour for a very good reason. It's not just because I pay for my own clutches. It's because measuring from a standing start on a rear-wheel drive vehicle is actually difficult to do consistency. And as with tire testing, I was doing multiple runs and then averaging the times to get the most pure data. So I picked a range I could pull all in one gear, which was 50 to 140 kilometers an hour or 31 to 87 miles an hour. The trusty M3 was impressively consistent, even with the control rerun, but the times were so close. The Apex ran at 5.76 seconds, the 38-pound wheel 5.93, and this one at 6.07, which is only a 0.31 second difference, or 5.47% between light and heavy. That's closer than I expected. For an extra data point, I also put 130 pound in the vehicle statically, which is the difference between this set and this set, which pulled a 5.88 seconds, so faster than the 38-pound wheel. So a heavier vehicle is faster than a lighter vehicle with heavier wheels. So it shows that rotational mass is a penalty. Good. Test 2 was obviously braking, which I ran at the same time, but the surface wasn't perfect, so the results were too inconsistent for me to share the data. The data I did get, and my gut feel was it was much closer than accelerating, essentially the same. So what's going on, and are my numbers correct, or am I just bad at my job? Well, during acceleration, the engine must push the car forward and rotate the wheels. The heavier wheels therefore act like an extra mass twice the real mass of the wheels plus their rotational inertia. Under braking, the peak deceleration is set by the friction between the tyre and the road, which barely changes with mass. The added translational mass increases the normal force by the same proportion, so it largely cancels out. What remains is only the extra rotational energy in the wheels to be shed, so stopping distance grows by a little bit, not a lot. So now we know why braking was closer. Is my data actually correct? Honestly, while I was testing, I didn't think it was too close, but it is. There are many ways of doing the maths to calculate the difference the weight should make based on where you believe the mass to be in the wheel and tyre package and what multiplier you want to use for that extra mass. Some people use a 1.5x, some people are 1.8x, and if you speak to race car engineers, they'll probably tell you that 10 pounds of wheel mass is the same as 40 pounds of vehicle mass, which is not correct. That's a lie. I calculated all the variations for the data we had, and it turns out the multiplier I have on these wheels is about 1.75, so I'm going to use that going forward. That's also a nice number, as it's kind of in the middle of everyone's thoughts. So now we have the base variable for the calculation. We can actually calculate other acceleration times. I need base figures for the car, so I Googled it and I found 3.9 seconds of this vehicle 0 to 60 and 8.9 seconds 0 to 100. And we're going to apply that to the light wheels. And you can see on differences, the differences, again, they're not huge. Going from the light wheel all the way to the 52-pound chonker adds 1/4 second to 60 and 1/2 second to 100. These are significant if you're racing and every tenth counts, but if you're on the street, that huge difference, not a lot. The difference in braking as predicted is even smaller. Using 25 meters as the braking distance from 60 to 0, the distance changed by just about 1/2 meter or 2 feet. That's the difference between two good tyres, let alone a good and a bad tyre. And again, 20 pound, the moon. What? So test 3 handling. We now are confident, I'm confident, the differences aren't that big if you're going in a straight line. But what if you're also turning and sliding and hitting curbs and needing to know exactly where the limit of grip is? Well, this video was meant to be out last year. I ran handling once at the end of the season, but I figured based on the data I would just be a laughing stock. So I spent the winter going hard on car upgrades, which included some MCS 3-way remote dampers, which are the best dampers you can buy for the F platform, some new 034 Motorsport brake rotors, as I cracked my last rotors testing the heavy wheels because it got so hot with such little cooling. Plus I dialed in the torque curve of the engine and remapped the ABS to improve the car on track. So with these improvements, the excellent dampers, the better brakes, the more drivability, how did the rerun go?
Okay, how do the different wheel weights perform around a lap? Now I have done 2 different circuits with these wheels and 2 different car configurations. And let me tell you, I am very surprised by what the data is telling us. Firstly, in both sessions, objectively the times are nowhere near as far apart as I thought. I thought with that huge mass of the heavy wheels, the lap times were going to fall off drastically. But I think on both circuits, with both car configurations, it's about 1.5 seconds between the lightest, the Apex, and the heavy, which is not what I expected. After the first session, I thought, no, there must be something wrong, conditions or track evolution, but here we are a second time, and it's exactly the same, 1.5 seconds. So that's the big takeaway, the surprise. Even an unrealistically heavy wheel doesn't cost you that much time objectively. However, both times I have noticed some things subjectively, which I think are way more important than the objectiveness. On the light wheel, the car wants to dance with you. You get good feedback from the steering wheel. You know what's going on to you under the front axle, which is the most important for feeling confident when driving. And as the wheels get progressively heavier, the detail through the front axle gets progressively less. And I don't know whether this is just the mass of the wheel working against the tyre. These poor Bridgestone pretends that RE71 RSs have been outstanding tyres, but I've really worked them hard. So I don't know if it's the mass of the wheel working against the tyre, or whether it's just the mass of the wheel hiding the detail you need from that front tyre to tell you what's going on. But as you get heavier, it gets harder to know where you are mid-corner, corner entry, corner exit, and you really have to know the car and tyre package and the circuit, I guess, to get the most out of it. It just gets harder to drive. Secondly, the rear axle. Now this is an interesting one. When the rear axle starts sliding, on the heavier wheel, it goes a little bit more quickly when it brakes, and you don't really understand when it's going to brake because the detail's lost through the rear as well. However, once you're sliding, again, I don't know if it's that extra mass spinning around trying to keep everything in a straight line, the car's easier to control. It's like less sudden. So that's an interesting thing I wasn't really expecting. Thirdly, on the stock suspension, now I ran the stock suspension car on the East Circuit, which has curbs you hit more. And one thing I didn't expect was the heavier wheel was smoother over the curbs. And I don't know if that's just the sheer mass of the tyres not having enough time to drop back down or the dampers not coping with it. But let me tell you, now I've got these MCS 3-way remote dampers, which are very nice dampers, and the car is so much more beautiful. That advantage is gone. Even when I'm over the curbs, even though I'm on the curbs less on this circuit, it's still more difficult, and this circuit is bumpy in places, and the car feels like it's working against you with the heavy wheels. Like, I'm sure the damper's doing a fine job of keeping up, but it's not making just all that mass moving around is not pleasant. And lastly, the heavier wheel definitely overheated the tyre quicker on both tracks, both suspensions, both everything. I found the rears were going off a lot sooner on the heavier wheel. So I guess the heavier wheel was it's just more work for the tyre to do. Poor little tyre, like I said. These Bridgestones have done very well. I recommend them, but I don't recommend a 52-pound wheel. So they're the major differences, objectively and subjectively. Like I said, objectively is way closer than I imagined it was going to be, like it was in acceleration. But this is the data, this is what I found, I'm not going to shy away from it. Subjectively, there are big differences in terms of drivability, and I think an amateur driver, or if you're at a circuit you don't know too well, you are going to get more from the light wheel because you just understand. Shocking, I've taken it back to tyres, but you understand what the tyre is doing more, and that is so critical for confidence. It just, I thought this test was going to present a massive difference subjectively. Light wheel is saving you loads of times. It's not. I've proven twice, and in acceleration, it's not saving you a huge amount of time. So if you're deciding between a 25-pound wheel and a 19-pound wheel, you're not going to be saving seconds on your lap time, maybe 10ths or 20ths. However, you are going to be giving you a better opportunity to drive the car and really understand what's going on underneath you, and to understand where the limit of grip is, and to get the detail from the chassis and the tyre of what the car is doing and where the limit is. So that's the biggest shock for me. Objectively, too smaller, like I said, I'm going to be the laughing stock at this rate, but subjectively, the light wheel is just, you can dance with it, you can understand it, and for that, I think it's worth it.
So, after all of this testing and all of this talking, are light wheels worth it? Well, initially I thought I might conclude with the fact you don't need to spend time thinking about wheel weights, as the performance difference between a few pounds a wheel is essentially unnoticeable. You can easily, literally spend tens of thousands of dollars on super light wheels and gain fractions of a second over a lap, and even less in acceleration and especially braking. But even with my brain thinking this, knowing this deep down, I still want the lightest wheel possible, which is stupid, but here we are. Anyway, now I've given it some more thought time and I've spoken with some of my peers. Here are my detailed, logical conclusions. The weight of your wheels, like so much in automotive, it's a diminishing returns exercise. And I've just proven that it has far less of an impact than people will tell you. But there are still some very good arguments for considering the overall engineering of your wheel, not just weight, but engineering. We'll get on that word in a bit. One way of looking at light wheels is cost per horsepower gained. Admittedly, in my M3, adding a bunch of horsepower is relatively easy because it has turbochargers. But if you're already in a tuned, normally aspirated engined vehicle, horsepower can be very expensive, and lighter wheels effectively give you 3 horsepower. In fact, moving from the bulk T47s, the 38-pound wheel, to the 20-pound Apex, it's approximately the same in my M3 as adding 15 horsepower. Suddenly spending 4K on a set of wheels seems like good value, especially when you can spend tens of thousands adding horsepower to a normally aspirated engine, and the wheels don't put any extra strain on your engine like tuning does. So there's that. The word engineering I just used, wheels flex under cornering. This is something I'm looking into more at the moment, so subscribe for that in the future. But the stiffness of a wheel is likely going to have way more of an impact on your lap time and drivability than a pound or two of weight. So if, for example, you're trying to decide between a proven stiff wheel, such as this Apex at 20 pounds, or a wheel from a company that cares less about engineering and more about marketing at 18 pound, I would pick the Apex all day. I've heard too many horror stories from tyre companies and tyre engineers about wheels changing the performance of their tyres when working with vehicle manufacturers and going from like the engineering test wheels to the what they call marketing wheels, the final wheels that come with the car. It can drastically alter your experience on track and on the road. Another way of thinking about it is obviously racing, especially endurance racing. The fraction of a second you gain per lap with a lighter wheel, it's only a fraction of a second, but by the end of an endurance race, by the end of 7 hours race distance, it might be well worth it. And the lighter car and lighter wheel mass will be friendlier on brake pad and gas use as well. Finally, if you're already looking at changing your wheels on your car, you're probably looking at changing fitment. So if you're shopping for wheels anyway, I mean, you're going to think about, well, wait, you're watching this video, so please go ahead and do it. So while this test didn't show the differences I was expecting based on online law, changes in wheel weight certainly do make a difference even if it's smaller than I expected. Plus there's that subjective handling. Does the deepest part of me still want to spend $20,000 on a carbon fiber wheel to save 3 pounds over my Apex? Yeah, I'm always going to be that person, but now I have the data from this test, I am super happy with a well-engineered from a company that understands wheels should flex as little as possible during cornering. That is more important to me than a final few pounds of weight savings. One last thing on why this wheel is now here. During this process, I learned that a 21 pound 18-inch wheel has a lower moment of inertia than a 20 pound 20-inch wheel. Not by a small amount either, but 20% lower, which in this calculated case equates to nearly a 20 extra pound-foot of torque required to spin that wheel. So that's a significant amount. So if you're thinking of wheel weight in terms of vehicle performance, a smaller diameter wheel usually outperforms a lighter, heavier wheel, and it definitely does. 100% factually it will if it is the same design. So it's just a smaller version of the same design. That is a really interesting takeaway and something I will be testing in the future. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Keep an eye on the channel for that bendy wheel content in the future. Honestly, it's super cool, super interesting. I love it. I think you're going to find it fascinating. And as always, safe motoring.